internet friends, and welcome back to my series where we look for quality clothing within a brand. Today we are focusing on Sezane, the Parisian it girl brand you guys have all been asking for. As always though, real quick disclaimer before we dive into this, this is my opinion and my opinion alone. I like to approach these videos from a quality standpoint and not a style standpoint. Style is such an individualized experience, and I am in no way saying you should not purchase these items based on style. This is more so to look at the quality standards within the brand. Everything was purchased with my own money and was washed and worn roughly for about a month. So without further ado, let's jump into this. Sezane was started in 2013 by Morgan Cezerly. But to truly understand the brand, we need to go back a little further. Morgan was selling vintage on eBay back in the early 2000s, eventually launching her own site named Les Compensants. From what I could gather, it felt like a solid mix of designer and quality goods. She would rework the vintage items, removing shoulder pads or making minor repairs, then do monthly drops of her curated finds. After a while, she got a little tired of the hustle with constant post office runs and photo shoots. As a former vintage dealer myself, can confirm it is a hustle. So she decided to launch her own brand of vintage-inspired designs, and Sezane was born. Keeping to the theme of small batches and limited quantities, the site grew at a steady pace, but knitwear slowly started to emerge as the dominating style and the most coveted items. In 2021, Sezane became B Corp certified, showing they are serious about sustainability in the current fashion climate. In 2022, shortly after they became B Corp certified, they took on a massive investment from private equity firms General Atlantic and Tethys. General Atlantic, based on publicly available information, holds roughly a 45% stake, so Tethys must be pretty small because Morgan still owns majority stake. And for some background, because I genuinely think these things matter for the direction of the company, General Atlantic has investments in OC, Vuori, Shein, with a $2 billion investment, I might add, Gymshark, Depop, Zimmermann, and Tory Burch. It does sound like these investments were crucial in expanding Sezane's market, and it took the brand from an indie label to fashion mainstream. Scroll for even just a little bit on Instagram and you'll recognize the knitwear on a lot of influencers with embedded PR hashtags and gifting. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but that's a lot of what this investment most likely helped pay for. But if you spend even a second perusing our Sezane on Reddit, you quickly realize most of the customers don't feel they are meeting the sustainability standards they have promised over the years. With frequent drops, scarcity mentality, Sezane feels like it's lost its spot as the most coveted Parisian it girl brand, a title it has long held. So let's dive deep into the current offerings and see how the quality stacks up. Real quick though, before we jump into this, I do want to say a quick thank you to the sponsor of today's video, that is Typology. It is seriously such a perfect fit for this video with the whole like French Parisian aesthetic. It just, you know, it's a vibe. Typology is a French skincare brand, and everything they make is formulated and manufactured in France. Their whole philosophy is keeping formulas minimal, only the essentials, and all their products are vegan, cruelty-free, and over 80% naturally derived. Today, I am using their Tinted Trio. I start with their Tinted Serum. This is not a foundation. It is a lightweight tinted skincare product. It's formulated with vitamin C, aloe vera, and squalane. Then I go in with their Tinted Concealer, which has caffeine and niacinamide. It helps reduce the appearance of dark circles and puffiness. And finally, their Tinted Lip Oil. I chose the Ruby Red just because, like, again, we're going for a whole vibe. I honestly really like this whole trio for like relaxed casual days. It's just one of those like perfect, you got to run out the door and you want to do your makeup really quick, like you want to look refreshed and ready to go for the day. Typology also gave me an exclusive offer for you. When you shop through my link, you'll receive a free hydrating cleanser milk with any purchase of $40 or more. This offer is only available for 1 week and there's no code. It's automatically applied through the link. Thank you again, Typology, so much for sponsoring this video. What a treat. Now, Sezane is not cheap, but it's also not crazy expensive to where I would say it's heirloom pricing. It's definitely on the higher end of the reviews that I've done, but pricing would technically be in line with brands like J. Crew and Banana Republic, just less offerings and way less sales. The first item I ordered is the Clo shirt, priced at $125. This has shockingly a lot of really good detail on it. The stitching, the pleats, the lace, the inside seams, all hit a quality control I would hope for. It's 100% organic cotton and has that airy, gauzy feel to it. Personally, I'm really pleased with it. I have a Bash top that is also a top Parisian style brand that I thrifted that is so similar and would have retailed for significantly more money. Granted, it does have way more fabric and design detail, but I really think the finishings rival the Bash blouse in some ways. Like the finishings on the sleeve cuff, shockingly, are better on the Sezane piece as opposed to the Bash blouse. Next is the Carter jacket at $330. You know, I'm gonna say this is okay. I like the design, and if you want to talk about trench coats and design, this is technically closest to the OG trench coat you can get. Some people would consider Burberry as the benchmark for trench coats historically, but technically the brand Macintosh is the OG trench coat, and I like the cut and the structure on this. Its design, although feels really minimal and bland to some people, it holds a lot of history, so it's kind of fun to see this style come back the way that it is recently and take on a bit of a feminine touch to it. I think for $330 though, I would like cleaner details. The buttonholes are messy, loose stitching, but again, the design is nice. I like the pleat that happens when you put your hands in the pocket. The fabric flows really nicely. It's just really hard to make that jump to $330 and not see those little details perfected. You can find Everlane's version for $198, but from the photos, it looks like it's a little stiffer and doesn't have those design touches with the longer collar or the printed inside lining. And the pockets sit lower on the Sezane. So you can tell it's more of a relaxed fit, but the Everlane has the neckline button and the Bemberg lining as opposed to the polyester blend lining. So in comparison, you are technically getting more of a utility or utilitarian cut and slightly more eco-friendly version on Everlane. But if you spend that $130 more, you get the luxe design and structure with Sezane. It's just like, man, that just paints a picture of how maddening clothing shopping is. Like all you're getting is a longer collar. But like slight round of applause to Sezane on the design team for this one. I do think it's designed well. Next, let's move on to this atrocity, the Conrad t-shirt. I shouldn't say atrocity, it's not that bad, but like still, it's sitting at $40. I'm slowly but surely collecting t-shirts from every review I do, so I can eventually do like a mega review. This one though will not be meeting my praises for $40. I have a little bit of a business theory. It's not even really a theory. Like I know this is how most of the business side works, but I want to make sure that this is separate from Sezane. Like I'm not saying Sezane is doing this. You either, with t-shirts and certain clothing items, you either have loss leaders or you have major profit drivers. I think when you look at a lot of these brands making t-shirts in this $40 price point, they are most likely major profit drivers. I think of loss leaders where like the company is either losing money or they're sitting at like a razor thin margin for what they're selling. And I think of like Target, Walmart, Uniqlo, I think is also another one that's probably sitting at like really razor thin margins for how much they're selling the t-shirts for and how much marketing they're putting into it, like cost of overall production kind of thing. They're probably not making a crazy amount of money on the item. But I think when you have a t-shirt that's like sitting at that $40 price point, and it's a style that is just like a signature piece in their brand, they're probably making a crap ton of money off of it. Let's be real with ourselves. I think it's why Uniqlo gets so much praise for their t-shirts. It's most likely sitting close to a loss leader or razor thin margins, enticing you to buy more from the store, where t-shirts like Sezane are probably sitting at the 80-ish% margin. Both business models are ruthless and not something I'm advocating for, but it's why smaller batches and attention to details matter. And I think this is just a basic t-shirt with a sloppy neckline using premium fabric. They do absolutely get a pass for being organic cotton, but having just come off of the Everlane review at $38, Everlane to me wins only because of the neckline. The construction is almost identical except for the length and detail of the neck binding. The Everlane is a tighter knit. It is shorter in length, but overall it holds shape significantly better because of the knitting. Sezane was warped after one wash and hang dry. I do want to note the fabric is really, really soft though, so props for that again, but to me, it is not worth the $40. Next, we have the Gustavo trousers at $125. These are cut well. They are 74% acetate and 26% viscose, so both semi-synthetic fibers. For the price point, I actually really like these. The fabric is good considering so many companies rely on polyester these days for trousers. I do need to note though, the pocket lining uses polyester, and depending on the cut, some of the different colors are made with polyester. The fabric drape is good. The pockets are deep, which I like that. Thinking in terms of Banana Republic or J. Crew, I'd say the finishings are pretty on par and in some cases better than what you can get from those brands in the price point. And I'm looking at you, J. Crew, and your really crappy hardware. Okay, moving along to the Wallace shorts at $145. Reminder, I live in Florida, so these bad boys are actually my new favorite shorts for winter. These are 100% wool with 100% viscose lining. The lining is super soft. Hand feel, I would have thought these were like a gauzy cotton. The buttonholes are actually really, really, really good. 10 times better than the Carter jacket. So all in all, a textured wool fabric, fully lined, and the construction, I genuinely like these. I think the price warrants the construction and is really fair. So yeah, I say these are a go. Okay, next, you know I had to do some denim. If you don't do denim well, I have some trust issues with you as a brand. These are the wide leg trousers at $160. These are pretty long on me as a petite person. I can say be prepared for some tailoring on the denim, but over 5'1", these might be a good fit for you. I really wanted the dark indigo wash, but they had elastin in them, so they were a hard no for me. The denim is thicker and softer than a lot of denim in this price point. The cut is nice. These are very stiff, slim fitting in the waist, so comfort level it's just not good. It's not. These are like do it for the outfit denim, not sit down at your desk all day denim. Like this is like date night denim or utility denim. I like them and I like that they are organic cotton and thick. I've run into that before with J. Crew where it's responsibly sourced cotton, but paper thin, flimsy denim that won't hold up over time. So this is the quality I'd hope for at this price, but the inside of the denim is a mess. These are not clean finishings and probably the messiest trim I've seen in a while. But for the price point being organic cotton, this is technically on the more affordable side of organic cotton. Just be really careful and make sure you read the composition carefully with each item you purchase. It changes with every single item and it's super frustrating. One item is cotton and the next in the same style is a poly cotton blend. So with that little minor complaint in place, that leads me to my final thoughts and hot takes, because you know I always have some. Okay, Sezane is such a divided topic, beloved by some and feeling scorned by so many others. And you might be saying, how could you not get the knitwear? These are the hero pieces. It's what the brand was built on. Well, I'm really picky. I'm a very picky person and I know what good knitwear can look like. And I think Sezane, from what I've seen, looks okay. For the price in today's market, I think it's fair. But good mohair cardigans from like the 1950s and 60s era were typically a mohair wool blend. Mohair also does tend to run scratchy. It can soften with age, and personally, I am a mega fan of mohair. If you've followed me for any point in time, you probably already know this, but I think the blend percentage is just enough for me to say no. A while back, I featured a silk nylon Angora sweater that was vintage in a thrift video and mentioned how you can find Sezane doing a version of this. Well, that sweater was once sold in the juniors department at Nordstrom. So it was considered lesser quality, younger audience than what you could find in the more upscale departments. So to me, that just paints a good picture of where we are now with fashion and what brands are willing to use for materials. And that's also not to say that vintage items weren't riddled with acrylic and nylon. All in all, blends actually are pretty decent. Kid mohair holds color really well, so it makes sense from a technical standpoint why they rely on it so much. Also, it gives it that sort of like lofty halo romantic look, and nylon or polyamide is a good thing in helping the knit last longer and bounce back. But personally, I think they aren't very experimental with their knits and just stick to what's clearly a customer favorite or what's clearly in the price bracket that they can manufacture these in. All of the blends seem to be the same. It's a pretty general kid mohair, alpaca, or wool, and 26 to 30% polyamide. It's a clear formula across all items, and it creates a signature Sezane look. But it also could be what's making them feel played out and increasing the number of dissatisfied customers. Plus, a lot of people are starting to seek out 100% natural materials. So seeing polyamide is an instant turnoff. Although, as I've mentioned on my channel in the past, a lot of times polyamide or nylon is necessary in knitwear like that to hold its shape and do a bounce back. And going back to the idea that the items are starting to feel played out or people are dissatisfied with the overall production, because they are dropping product more frequently and expanding the brand, they likely don't have the cash flow to test out other products and design and source other fibers. They clearly have found a hero piece for the brand, which is knitwear. I get the feeling it's probably like a double-edged sword for them. With a B Corp certification, they have to hold everything they source at a certain standard to maintain it, plus remain within a certain price. So most likely it's just safer for them to continue producing what works for them and sells. And with proper care, these most likely have the chance to last a long time. But for the average consumer, I would guesstimate probably about 10 years. But from a vintage standpoint, and Morgan should have some pretty solid insights on this, the knitwear they are reproducing was historically made of either mohair wool blend, cotton and viscose, cotton silk and viscose, mohair silk and viscose, angora silk and cotton, cashmere silk and angora or mohair or whatever textured source you want to throw in there. But also, yes, acrylic. I've found my fair share of acrylic sweaters that are clearly being re-engineered. And also, yes, I do want to point out survivorship bias is definitely a real thing when it comes to vintage clothing. We have the solid formulas of what will last a long time when it comes to those standards. And I don't think these sweaters are lifetime items for the most part. Which leads me into my next complaint, which is the men's department. Cause yeah, they do sell men's clothing. It's called October Editions. They got some really good clothes, okay? I'm very jealous of the men's department. Most of it is 100% wool or 100% cotton. What I find so interesting though about the men's department is you actually pay more for the men's clothing. They are right around the $200 price point for the knitwear. But in my opinion, it's less of a blend in the knitwear. And I think those pieces are closer to the longer lasting, I don't want to say necessarily heirloom pieces, but like, yeah, taken care of correctly, most likely will last you a really long time. So it's really frustrating to see that they're willing to charge more in the men's department for a better quality sweater. Now, granted, the designs are boring. So I think that's where, and that's a huge trade-off with men's fashion is, you know, the designs are not as interesting. They're not as like feminine or, you know, it's just this classic like utility military style that you see with men's clothing. I think what I find the most interesting and probably the most telling with the men's department though, is the fact that they will raise the prices to that $200 price point to hit the better quality fabric choices, but they won't do that in the women's department. And I get the feeling they probably have an awareness of how much their customer base will spend. So they'll do whatever they can to make sure that they maintain that like strategic price point. And I think you see that kind of similar business model in a company like J. Crew and probably even Banana Republic too. But like J. Crew will have their J. Crew collections or like their premium brands, and that's where you can find the like really good quality. And then you have their basic pieces, which are just kind of like, you know, a whatever standard. And I think Sezane kind of captures that with their collaborations that they do. They drop a lot of collaborations, it seems like, and those seem to be the elevated pieces that are above that, you know, $200 price point for a basic button down, but there's a lot more detail, better fabric choices, all that kind of stuff. But also going back to her vintage stuff, I'm a little frustrated, but I'm also a little bit in awe of what she's been able to do. I look at Sophia Amorosa, like, oh boy, were we scorned and burned with that one. Like, I look at Nasty Gal and I think, what an awesome company, but then it was such a bummer to see her take that company and turn it into such an ultra fast fashion label and then sell it to an ultra fast fashion label. It was such a heartbreak to see that as someone who was selling vintage and, you know, kind of going that eco-friendly route. But then I see what Morgan is doing and I think, wow, like, it's really cool that she's been able to successfully do a B Corp certification. She's like following all the checks and balances that she needs to do in order to run a good company. And also this was all like post 2020, so that she was able to get the B Corp certification. So that was a rough 5 years for anybody running a business, and especially in the fashion world. Also, not to mention, from what I could gather, some of her original team is still working for the company. So like that also is really cool and exciting to see. I'm sure they're kind of a little bit worried with the private equity investment. I know that was a huge boost for them as far as the business goes, and I don't think it would have been possible for them to gain so much traction in the US. And I can't find any data on it, but I do get the feeling they probably make more money in the US market than they do the France market. Two other like kind of gripes that I have with the company is the photos on the website are awful. You have to use your imagination, and you can't like zoom in very easily, so you can't see product detailing. They don't have any like flat lays or anything like that, so you just can't. It's almost like Zara, where you're just like, I just want to see this like straight on and to the side and the back, like that's all I want to see. But you don't get that. You have to use your imagination, or you have to put your trust in the company. They do these like very, you know, artsy, artistic photo shoots, but you can't really tell like what's going on with the outfit, and that is very frustrating. Also, they send you the product with like a perfume sprayed on it, and as someone who gets migraines, yeah, hate that. Just to wrap this up in a pretty little bow, money for value, they definitely are on the lower end of the like it girl Parisian brands. You have brands like Bash and Rouge that are typically around the like $300 price point. So technically Sezane is in the lower price bracket with that. When I compare them to like Bash and Rouge, I think you get a little bit more interesting styles in Bash. And I think in some cases you can get better, like far better quality standards. And I think in some cases you can get better materials. They use a lot more silks. They use a lot more like materials in general to make the items. So you have a lot more like flowy and flouncy items. But when I compare them to Rouge, I'm just like, holy smokes. Like I hadn't looked at Rouge's website in a really long time, and I was floored by their prices, like could not believe it. So when I think in terms of kind of that Parisian style and capturing that marketplace, I think Sezane actually is like clearly the most affordable. And I think depending on how you want to shop as far as style goes, they definitely have this like really polished, almost career wear look to them. So yeah, I think they definitely are needed. I think they could potentially slip into that kind of Anthropologie quality standard, which really frustrates me. I know you can find them occasionally at Anthropologie, if I'm not mistaken. I think as far as the way that they're running their business, I see more of a J. Crew business model than I do an Anthropologie business model. Because when you order something from them, they send you a catalog, you have their whole story going on. Also, not to mention, before they even came out here, I found some links with J. Crew doing a wholesale order through them. So there are some business connections out there. I assume at one point in time, J. Crew did like a pop-up kind of thing where you could buy Sezane through J. Crew in the US market, but there are definitely some connections there. But yeah, as far as business model goes, I definitely recognize more of that kind of catalog order feel to them where, you know, you can shop this like overarching aesthetic. So is Sezane worth it or not? Oof, it's so hit or miss. I think you have to comb the website very carefully to decide if something's worth it or not. And I think you have to really be in love with the style, because what keeps happening to me every single time I do these reviews is I'm like, oh my gosh, I can find X, Y, and Z, like the t-shirt, can find a way better deal on that. The jacket, for $330, I don't think that was worth it. I probably would have been way happier with the trench coat from Uniqlo that was around $100. Again, it's not that style, it's not the long collar and stuff like that, but I just wasn't sold on the fit. It just wasn't that exciting. I think honestly, the only thing that I'm happy with, like truly happy with, are the shorts. I think the shorts are fantastic. Everything else though, I'm like, oof. So yeah, I would say with Sezane, maybe proceed with caution. They're good, but they're not great. I think it's a very hit or miss kind of thing. But also, I think for the price point, B Corp certified, organic cotton, all those things considered, I do think it's nice from an eco-friendly standpoint. And I think they're producing clothing in a price point that you can't find very often, if that makes sense. Like that kind of vintage inspired feel, you just can't find that in modern day clothing. So a lot of their knitwear, I think you're making a sacrifice in quality for the style, and it makes sense for some people. but I do think there are standards out there that are way better quality. That is it for today's video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you're new around here, I might have a couple extra videos for you right here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.